Hey guys, so with the release of hard mode Crota's End comes a couple of changes to the raid. This video assumes that you are familiar with how Crota's End works on normal mode. If you're not familiar with Crota's End, please check out the two guides that I have made for the raid. You can find them in the description. The Abyss encounter and Bridge encounter essentially remain unchanged. In the Abyss, the Cursed Thrall are now hallowed, the Knights are hallowed, and the Ogres kill you much faster. Not to mention that everything is now level 33. The strategy here is still the same, the lamp path is still the same, but you may want to move faster than you did before, and you may want to employ the help of a couple of warlocks with Obsidian Mind equipped to easily clear the adds. This is not a necessity if you have a balanced group composition though. You should aim to clear stacks of Weight of Darkness right away, and as soon as everyone is clear, sprint to the next lamp. Only fight at lamps to avoid having your group split up and having to stay at lamps longer because of players lagging behind. Faster is better. The Bridge encounter also remains unchanged. Enemies are level 33, which just makes the encounter more difficult due to the level differences. However, I didn't notice a dramatic increase in the amount of enemies that spawn, nor did I notice that more major enemies spawned compared to normal mode. This fight is more difficult strictly because you're one level below. The Shriekers in the Gauntlet event now respawn if you take too long, so it's a little more of a blitz through the Gauntlet. The Ear Ute encounter is still the same for the most part, but now you only have 1 minute and 40 seconds before the song starts, so you need to move quicker. The Crota encounter, while still mechanically the same, brings additional challenges. First off, the Boomer Knights are now hallowed, requiring more attention to bring them down. Next, the Knight that jumps onto the bridge after you kill said Boomer Knights is no longer a Knight, but is now a hallowed Wizard, which may obstruct your view of Crota. Next, a Gatekeeper spawns during the fight, who will roam the pit area where all of the Thrall are. If you use a strategy that doesn't revolve around the use of players going down into the middle at any point, the Gatekeeper can be completely ignored as it will not walk up the stairs under normal circumstances. Finally, Crota will instantly enrage once his health reaches around 15 to 20%, so timing is much more important. There are a few strategies that can be utilized here, but the one I'll be discussing is the strategy that my group uses. The strategy that my group uses is a slower, safer strategy that gets Crota down in 3 swords. However, there is also the option of going with a 2-sword, 3-kneel strategy that is higher risk, but results in skipping the Ogre phase because you kill Crota so quickly. Both strategies work pretty similarly, but with the 2-sword strategy, the timing is much tighter and missing 1 or 2 hits could be the difference of completing the encounter and wiping. There is another strategy here that revolves heavily around the use of 2 Titans, with both Titans wearing Helm of Saint 14. However, not every group is going to have that, so the strategy I'll cover is a more general strategy that does not require the use of any specific weapons or armor. With the 3-sword strategy, you can take things slower. What my group does is have everyone focus the Boomer Knights as they spawn, then move immediately to the Sword Bearer. The Sword Bearer needs to die pretty quickly if you don't want Crota to rotate to the other side during the sword phase. While the Sword Bearer is being finished off, half the team should focus on the Wizard that spawns, and by the time the Wizard dies, you should time it so that the Sword Holder should be in position for Crota. An ideal Wizard Watcher is a Defender Titan using suppression grenades, as they'll completely disable the Wizard for quite a while. However, you should put as many people as possible on the Wizard to get rid of it quickly. Ideally, you'll have a Warlock or a Hunter who can kill the Sword Bearer to generate orbs for the Sword Holder so that they can use a super on Crota, but this is more of an insurance policy for Crota damage than a necessity. You can also have a Titan use their Ward of Dawn near where the Sword Holder goes to generate 2 orbs for them. Get Crota's shield off in whichever way is more comfortable for your raid group. The Sword Holder, if they have a super, should be able to get Crota to around 55% assuming perfect sword runs. This is way more than necessary. In this clip, I'm using 3 slams instead of 2 slash combos. This is because I want to avoid doing too much damage in one go, since we do not need to rush. As long as you get 33% of Crota's health gone every sword, you will be totally fine. As the Sword Holder, you need to trust your team that they will get you the damage that you need for you to attack. If you're using a bursty rocket launcher method to bring down Crota's shield, let your team call when they are all firing rockets, then after the first couple of them hit, you should head up. This, most of the time, will get you perfectly up to Crota as he is kneeling down, but this will definitely take some practice to learn, mainly in regards to how much damage your group actually needs and does to bring down Crota. Good timing with the sword is a very crucial component to this fight. Repeat this process again for when Crota comes back to the middle for the second sword. Note that if your damage is very strong, you'll need to halt damage so you don't accidentally tip Crota into the enrage. You're aiming to get his health as close to the enrage as possible without tipping. Once you get Crota to low enough health, simply complete the ogre phase and the final sword should do more than enough damage to bring down Crota. You can take as much time as you want on the ogres because the third sword will end up being the kill, and you shouldn't come remotely close to enrage unless you take a very, very long time. Here's an idea of how much time you can actually take. We let Crota rotate left after the second sword, then back to the middle,
Crota's going back mid.
then to the right, then back to the middle before we killed him with the third sword.
Let's just wait for Crota to go back to the mid. Like, let's just play it super 100% safe.
The only reason why we wait is because we prefer the middle position to take down Crota. Note that when you're finally bringing down Crota with the third sword that he will enrage. Most of the time you can simply ignore the Oversoul and just focus on Crota. In fact, this is what needs to happen if you hope to kill him. However, once Crota is kneeling, your entire team should then focus on the Oversoul just in case. The 2-sword strategy is similar to the 3-sword, you just need to have the group communication and the damage to bring down Crota that many times within one sword. However, chances are if you're using this strategy, you probably don't need me telling you what to do or how to execute this strategy. Like I said, either strategy works, it just depends on which your group likes better or finds easier to perform or more reliable. My group preferred the 3 swords for our first kill, but I'm sure we'll end up trying the 2-sword strategy at some point. I would definitely recommend the 3-sword approach until you get more comfortable with the fight, as I feel like the 2-sword strategy is too hit or miss for the average group. As for any thoughts on the hard mode, it's certainly much more difficult than the normal mode, that is for certain. In the future, I definitely like to see shifts to mechanical changes to fights as opposed to just making things into bullet sponges. The Ear Ute encounter after you kill Ear Ute, for example, is just a mess of enemies and turns cleaning up the enemies into a chore since there's no way you could kill close to everything during the actual encounter. The Abyss has quite a few Hallowed Knights spawning during the finale of the encounter, to the point where even I wouldn't mind seeing a couple of them removed to not feel like running a Saint 14 Titan was a necessity for a lot of groups. I thought the bridge was fine, nothing really changed there. I thought the Thrall Gauntlet change was fine, and I also think Crota is fine for the most part. I'd also like to see a shift to incentive-based loot. I think there should be additional challenges built into fights that can potentially reward secret or bonus loot if you complete them. For example, let's say you managed to kill a couple of Gatekeepers during the Crota fight. That should be rewarded with either more loot or a secret raid item only obtainable for completing that objective. You could still have bosses drop loot in the way that they do now, but for those players who wanted to go above and beyond, you can still reward. My bridge encounter idea, where your loot depends on how many Gatekeepers you've killed and not just getting over the bridge, is another example of the incentive-based loot system, but obviously tweaks would need to be made because of RNG, yada yada, gonna just leave it at that. Anyway, that is your Crota hard mode guide and review. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.